Welcome to another in our series of Kehillat Israel podcasts. This is a recording of Rabbi Amy Bernstein's weekly Friday morning Torah study.
We will begin at 2453 is where the triennial division starts. As you know, I try to stay as close to that as possible, so we touch on as many texts of the Torah as possible, not just the ones that are easier to deal with. And so we're going to look, actually let's go back to verse 50, because it's a little bit clearer place to start, I think.
Lavan and Bethuel responded by saying, "This matter has emanated from Yud-Heh Vav-Heh. We cannot answer you one way or the other. Look, Rebekah is before you. Take her and go, and let her be your master's son's wife, as Yud-Heh Vav-Heh has decreed." When Abraham's slave heard the words, he bowed low to Yud-Heh Vav-Heh, and brought out silver and gold objects and articles of clothing, and gave them to Rebekah, and to her brother and mother he gave precious gifts. So he and the men with him ate and drank and stayed overnight. When they got up in the morning, he said, "Send me off to my master." Her brother and mother said, "Let the girl stay with us for another few days, 10 perhaps, after which she may go." But he said to them, "Do not delay me. Now that Yud-Heh Vav-Heh has cleared the way for me, send me off and let me go to my master." They answered, "Let us call the girl and see what she has to say." So they called Rebekah and asked her, "Will you go with this man?" And she said, "I will go."
Okay. If we read the story in light of the way we've been reading the last two parshiot, if we're going to read this story in light of Sarai having designated Yitzchak as her heir, but we talked about she needs now, right, to find the bride. The family needs to find the bride for Yitzchak that will in fact be Sarai's heiress, right, in a different way, inheriting her station within the clan, within her relationship to the sancta, right, her relationship to her position and possibly as priestess originally, yes? So then we talked about the birth of Rebekah, right? We got told about the birth of Rebekah, and there are some commentators who suggest that it is Rebekah who is designated for Yitzchak, so that Sarai can go back to her clan and pick a female heir for herself for Yitzchak. Okay, so we're just because for fun we're gonna read it that way.
And Rebekah got here just in time.
Right, there you go. All right, so already it seems to be that this is there's divine intervention here, right, of some kind. Because if you remember the story, we read the whole story of Rebekah last year, right, in the second triennial division. We're in the third triennial division now. So we're getting kind of the end of the betrothal scene. And so we're getting to the place where Eliezer's already prayed to God for what the person should say. It's a good problem. It's a good problem to have, that we are out of chairs. So Eliezer's already asked God, "Please have the maiden who's meant for my master's son say the following." She says the following, right? And she demonstrates this alacrity and willingness to run and water all the camels. And so now we're coming to the end where it's now time to make a deal, right? Let's make a deal. So who's missing from this scene?
It's the father.
Well, Isaac was not allowed to go. Isaac has to stay home. He's not allowed to leave Canaan. Rebekah's father, right? So in the patriarchal narratives, in the patriarchal Middle East, Near East, it would have been the patriarch. It would have been the father who would have made arrangements for his daughter's marriage. So we don't get a father here. It is Lavan, right, and Bethuel who are answering, right? So they say, here's Rivka, and they feel like, remember he comes into town with all these Hummers filled with stuff, right, with furs and Paige jeans, right? So it's very clear how wealthy Abraham is. So it seems like the deal's kind of happening. So here's Rivkah, take her and go and let her be a wife to your master's son as God has spoken. Eliezer has made it this whole big deal that God has answered him. And that it's divinely, ordained that Rivkah marry Yitzchak. When Abraham's servant heard their words, he bowed low to the ground. Right, he's very, very, very happy that he's found the bride for Yitzchak. The servant brought out objects of silver and gold and garments and gave them to Rebekah, of course. Right? You have to. This is what you do to acquire the bride. And he gave presents to her brother and her mother. Okay, of course you're going to, give wealth to the family of the bride. Then he and the men with him ate and drank, because that's what you do to conclude the deal, right? It's still that way with Jews, right? When you're going to do anything of any import, you eat. So they eat and they drink, so everything's fine. So when they arose the next morning, Eliezer says, I got to go. I got to get back. But her brother and mother said, let the maiden remain with us some 10 days. Why?
To throw a party.
Right? 10 days to fet the bride.
Celebrate.
To celebrate. And to take that takes away from the bride her party. Right? This is about her. So they say, let her remain with us. There's a lot of things that have to happen. There's the bridal shower, right? There's the opening of the gifts. There's the, whatever. The registry, right? Checking off what we got, what we didn't get, what we're going to return, which of the jeans fit. All right, so he said to them, do not delay me now that God has made my errand successful. Give me leave that I may go to my master. And they said, what?
Let's ask for
Check with her.
All right, so again, verse 57, if you read Hebrew, the third word in the Hebrew, Vayomru, and they said, Nikra lana'ar. Let us call the na'ar. What is na'ar? Young man. What? Let us call the na'ar. Let us call the youth, and it is male youth. Vanish Allah et piha, and let us ask her what she thinks. Right? So we've talked at length about this last year. When we read the middle section of the story, it is a kriktiv. It is written na'a. It is usually read na'ara, which is feminine youth. But clearly something, and it's not just once. This happened last year in the text we read, and it happens again here. Clearly there is something about Rivkah that is na'ar-like, not na'ara-like. So what might that be? Her strength. She's strong. What else? She's a tomboy. She's determined, says Sarah.
She'll have her own agency.
Wait, one at a time. Pam, what were you saying?
That she has her own agency if they're going to ask her what she thinks.
So she has agency in a way that young women who are being arranged for to be acquired do not generally have in the ancient Near East. So already she's out of character. Right, so they're using a more descriptive word for how she behaves and what's allowed her than other women. Somebody else had something to say?
that she has her own voice.
That she has her own voice. She speaks for herself, right, in this instance. And she's treated like a na'a, right? Would they have gone to a 14-year-old girl and said, what do you want to do? Generally not. Why do they ask Rivkah what she wants to do?
She's strong.
And if they don't, what might happen?
She might not want to marry.
But usually it's like, too bad. The family's arranging for who you marry. You don't get a say in that.
Yeah, but isn't it true that she's 3 years old right now?
No.
No.
Unlikely. Because she runs to water the camels.
Right. I thought it said there she was 3.
So just work with me for a second, visually, Mark. Think of a water carrier that's clay, ceramic.
Right.
Now fill it.
Right.
Now what do you have to do to move it? You have to put it on your head or on your shoulder, right? And she does this back and forth to water the entire camel train,
Right.
who have been crossing the desert.
Right.
Right? Their tanks are empty, right? And so she runs and does it herself. A 3-year-old, not a chance. So likely that's a midrash, and a midrashic tradition that is interested in having her be younger. For why, I'm not sure. But she's most likely a maiden of marriageable age, which is why she was hanging around. Where do you water from? The well. Where are marriageable virgins to be found? At the well. Where do the betrothal scenes happen? At the well. Right. So all of we're getting all the cues and all the signals that say she's a young woman of good standing, of a good family, of marriageable age.
Because water's transition.
Water is transition. Water is life, right? And marriage is all about continuing the line, right? Okay. So,
Is there any sense she's bisexual?
So there's definitely a sense, I think, that there's something being played with here about gender. She's, and to call her Na'ar repeatedly and it not get corrected, I don't know, tells me there's a tradition that's being preserved that we don't know what it is exactly, but I have to believe there's something going on, right, with the language there.
She sounds like she's a large woman.
She sounds like she's a large woman.
You don't mean physically.
She's strong.
Physically.
She's definitely strong.
But she's carrying something this big full of water on her head or whatever.
Which is what they did. So it's typical, right, that they would carry the water that way. So she's not doing something atypical. But the fact that she hurries to do it, the fact that she waters all the camels, right, all of that seems to suggest she's a doer. She's definitely a doer.
I have a feeling it's her will, though, that they're emphasizing here.
Okay. So going to that, right, going to exactly what you just said, Judith, he said, where am I?
59?
50, yes, 58. Vayikru'u Rivka, Vayamru Eleha, and they call Rivka and they say to her, Hatelchi im ha'ish hazeh? Will you go with this man? Vatomer, and she says, Elech. Tell me the root of this word. Oh, ha. Telchi, will you go? And she says, Elech. The aleph means future tense me. I will go. All right. So, who else has something to do with this? Which is to whom? Avraham. So, this is one of those places where we see that the rabbis line up Rivka with Avraham, not with Sarai. Not right. This is the new Avraham. Because if we think about it, think about Yitzchak. What do we really know about Yitzchak?
Kind of wimpish?
He's kind of wimpish. Okay, we don't know a lot about Yitzchak, right? We believe a lot of the Yitzchak tradition has been lost to us. But we know a lot about Rivka, who in the story with Yitzchak is going to have a lot to say about the destiny of the future of the family. Yes? As in some ways did Sarai. Yes?
Well, last night I was doing homework with my grandson who's in 6th grade. And they're in a chapter in social studies or history, studying ancient people. So I was very impressed. There are 2 chapters about the Jews. Who knew? Because when I was in school, there was nothing like that when I was in school. So we were looking, and he was talking about Abraham and Moses and all these guys. I said, well, where is Rebecca? Where is Sarah? Where is this? So we had this wonderful discussion about patriarchy and what it is and what it means. So to be continued.
For the rest of his life, right? So if you have anything to say about it, it's the rest of his life. But good for you, Paula, that you took advantage of a teachable moment, right? Because that is so glaring to us who sit in this room every week, right? But think about how many people, if you ask who's Isaac's wife, who's Moshe's wife? How long does it take everyone in this room to figure out who Moses' wife is? Oh, well, that's cheating, Lisa. Right? So it's glaringly obvious to those who sit in this room, which I love about all of you, is that you were like, your first reaction was, that's nice, but excuse me, there's something missing here, which is the other half of the story, right? Rita?
Just getting back to a laugh, when you said it reminds us of Abraham, maybe that's the connection with Nahar. She's connected to a male, so it could be all of these.
Nice. That she is like Avraham in that sense, and the word Na'ar is used because she demonstrates these qualities that were very much associated with Avraham. I will go. Right? So all the things it took for Avraham to say, okay, Hineni, right, here I am, ready, it took those same things for Rebecca. She's never even seen Isaac. She's about to.
Because it's Nahar without the vowels, could be read Hara.
So, right, in the scroll, there are no vowels, so it just says Nun Ayin Resh, Na'ar. There should have been a Hey at the end to say Na'ara. That Hey tells us how to vocalize the consonants. That Hey, right, means it's Na'ara, not Na'ar. Okay. And by the way, we can't be confident about how we pronounce Hebrew vowels today. Just so you know. Like, even when we have the vowels, we have absolutely no idea what they sounded like when it was originally spoken in this time. We have no idea. All right. I mean, they look at languages surviving, like Arabic and Aramaic, around Hebrew, but it's only a guess. We have no idea what those vowels originally would have actually sounded like.
Pretty vitally important too, those vowels.
Well, so it's entirely possible that if we were to drop back into when this was an oral tradition, it's very possible I would understand very little of it. Mm-hmm. Right? So think about Middle English.
Exactly.
Right? And our English, I mean, it's not quite the same. That's more like biblical Hebrew to rabbinic Hebrew or modern Hebrew, but it's that idea that it's the same roots and the same consonants, but if the vowels are all different, then we would understand very little of what's being said.
Everything evolves.
Yeah.
Everything evolves.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So accuracy is very difficult in that sense. All right. So where are we, Bert?
They then sent their sister Rebekah off with her nurse, with Abraham's slave, and with his men, bestowing this blessing upon Rebekah. Sister, may you become thousands of myriads. May your descendants take possession of the gates of their foes. Rebekah and her servant girls got up and mounted the camels and followed the man as the slave took Rebekah and went off. Now Isaac was coming from the approach to... Oh my gosh. Can you give me a hand?
Where are you? Oh, Be'er Lahai Roi.
Right, from there. What she said. For he was living in the area of the Negev. Going out toward evening to stroll in the field, Isaac looked up and saw camels coming. And Rebekah looked up. Seeing Isaac, she got off the camel and said to the slave, "Who is this man striding in the field coming to meet us?" "He is my master," said the slave. Taking a veil, she covered herself. The slave then told Isaac all that he had done. And Isaac brought her into the tent of his mother Sarah. He took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. Thus did Isaac take comfort after the death of his mother.
Okay.
Mother's boy.
So at verse 61, Vatakam Rivka v'na'aroteha. So interestingly, Rivka got up, and she gets up with whom? Her na'arot. Her group of na'araz. Right? Her posse. But they're described as na'arot. Right? As opposed to Rivka. And so they get on the camels, and they vatelechna, and they lecht after the man, right? Because that's what this is all about. Lech. Just like Avraham, she's now going to be an immigrant. Right? She's going to have exactly this experience Avraham had, leaving everything that is familiar, with no idea where she's going, no idea what that destiny looks like. She's leching. Because that's what Avrahams do. Right? All right, so she's leching, acharei ha'ish, after the guy, vayikacha eved et Rivka vayelech, and the slave, the Eliezer here, he acquires Rivka, vayelech, and he goes. Right? So a lot of leching here. Right? So very much this resonance of Avraham. Lech lecha, lech lecha, lech lecha. Vayitzchak ba mi bo be'er lachai ro'i. What is be'er lachai ro'i? We just studied this.
Hagar's place.
Aha. That is the place where what happens to Hagar?
She's seen.
Well, yes. Before that. So yes, but it's also Hagar who sees. Right? Hagar sees the well. Be'er lahai ro'i is about a well. The well where God sees me after I see blah, 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 all that tangled Hebrew that we really can't translate. So she's at Be'er lahai ro'i. This is where she has the encounter with the malach, with the angel. She's seen by the malach. She sees the well. She doesn't want to see the boy die, right? So all of this is entangled in Be'er lahai ro'i. We think it's just he was coming from Sunset and Pacific and PCH. No, this is not about Google Maps. This is about he's coming from Be'er lahai ro'i. So there's going to be stuff about, if it's a well, what does it have to be about?
Water.
Water. Yes, if there's a well, it's about water. But what? Life and marriage, right? So he's coming from the well. Be'er lahai ro'i, he's coming from there, but with all that's laden on that. So we know there's going to be something about seeing and being seen, right? And God has something to do with it because that's a magic spot, Be'er lahai ro'i, right? Hagar's life was saved there. The survival of her son and his progeny is assured there. All of this is a trigger to the reader, to the listener, as you're sitting around the campfire. Yitzchak is coming from Be'er lahai ro'i. Ooh. Marriage, betrothal, life, your genealogy is going to go on, survival is going to be ensured, right? Like all of that comes with this side note. Okay. So he's coming from, happens to be Be'er lahai ro'i, and what happens? He's in the field, Vayetze Yitzchak lasuach basadeh, and so Yitzchak goes out lasuach basadeh. What is lasuach? What does your translation say? Strolling. Okay. So lasuach, if you want to translate it as strolling, comes from Arabic saha. So in Arabic, saha means to stroll. So if we don't know exactly what a Hebrew word means, we go to cousin languages.
Like Sahara.
Like Sahara. Like Sahara? Is that what Sahara means? Strolling in the emptiness. There you go. Nicely done, Mehmet, right? He gets a gold star. All right. So from Arabic, sacha, possibly. But lasuach, a sicha. What is a sicha in Hebrew? A conversation. Good, Rita. Sicha, conversation. Then lasuach means what? If sicha is conversation, lasuach means to discuss. So he's going out to the field to discuss. With whom becomes the first question. And about what? And why would you go out to the sadeh, to the field, lasuach, to have a conversation?
Is it a conversation with God?
Aha, Jana, the meditator, the player of bowls family. To have a conversation with God. Now, where do you think the rabbis go? Is he strolling or talking to God? Of course. He's talking to God. And the rabbis go further and say, not only is he talking to God, but it's in the afternoon. And because our patriarch in the afternoon is talking to God, therefore we have what? Mincha. We have mincha. We have the afternoon service. Because Yitzchak instituted it for us. Thank you, Yitzchak, that we now have this lovely tradition of conversing with God in the afternoon.
He's conversing with himself. Isn't that what prayer is mostly? I mean, and then...
Mehmet, beautiful. So, actually, to your point, what does Lahit Palel
reflexive
actually mean?
Talking to himself.
Aha. Go, Mr. President. Lahit Palel, to pray. The heat makes it reflexive. It is something I do to myself. This is a reflexive Hebrew verbs, like je me brosse in French. I brush my hair, right? It's reflexive. So lehit palel, this makes it 2. These markers are terrible. Richard, I can't find my box.
What?
They cleaned my office and I can't find my box.
I'm the one with the lock?
I know, but it doesn't help me to have a code on the lock if I can't find the box. All right, so I know, sorry, sidebar. So lehit palel, 2. This makes it reflexive. What is pilel?
Judge.
To judge. Lehit palel. Prayer. The word for prayer in Hebrew means to judge myself. Notice it's not causative. I'm not trying to do anything with whom? God.
It's reflexive.
I'm not trying. It's not that I'm influencing. It's not that I'm manipulating. It's not that I'm begging. Right? Lehit palel is completely reflexive. Prayer is not about God. God forbid. Because that would suggest God needs prayer. What, God has an ego problem? God forbid, right? So it means it's something I do to myself. Prayer is about changing me. So, or in this case, judging me, but to your point, right? If he's Lasuach, constructionism says, so Lasuach here for the rabbis and for the Hasidic tradition was actually, he was talking out loud with God as witness. And that was a Hasidic practice. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov was famous for saying you should go outside, be in nature, and talk, have a sicha, have a conversation with God for an hour. And so the practice was they would go outside in nature and just talk for an hour. Try it.
The perfect French
We did it at IJS, at the Institute for Jewish Spirituality. Mark, they might do it to you. So we had to go out and find a place where no one else could hear us, but we were close enough that no one's going to get lost. And we just had to talk for half an hour.
It's the Hasidic version of the talking cure. I mean, it's basically psychoanalysis.
It's right, psychoanalysis, but the analyst doesn't talk back, right? In this case. The analyst is sitting behind you in a chair while you're lying on the grass, right? And the analyst is the silent God, right? Okay, or yourself, right? The part of you that is divine, however we want to talk about that. So this is very much a part of becomes a very big part of Jewish tradition, this idea of talking, of conversing with God. So what does this tell us about Isaac? Let's say it's meditating, conversing with God, praying.
That he has an inner life. He has an inner life. He's contemplative.
He's contemplative. He has an inner life. Jana?
That he's a searcher. He's a seeker.
He must be suffering.
Suffering, seeker, hold those.
That he has a relationship with God.
Okay, he trusts he has a relationship with God. Why is he suffering, and why might he be so driven to seek?
Well, I mean, that whole horrible experience of what happened in his youth, it's going to haunt him until the end.
The deed that can't be spoken? What is that, Mehmet, that happened to him in his youth?
I mean, he was on the brink of death, being killed in Christ's father.
Oh, right, thank you. The big missing piece there. By his father.
Yeah, who misled him?
Right.
Who didn't say anything to him. He didn't mislead him. He didn't say anything. He just said, okay, grab some wood. We're going. And they traveled for 3 days, right? There's lots of midrashim that want to write that conversation. The 3 days of hiking with wood and stuff and no animal for sacrifice.
Well, and possibly that's why he lost his mother.
Very, very nice. Make the connection for us.
Well, it's not in the Torah, but it's in Midrash that's why she died so soon thereafter. She heard the news as to what had happened and boom, gone.
Yes. She doesn't just hear the news. Who tells her the news in the Midrash, in the Talmud? Come on. Who would be really ticked off that Abraham is willing to sacrifice his only son for God? Satan. Satan is furious that Abraham agrees to the sacrifice. And so goes to Sarah and says, Is your husband around? No? Well, guess where he is, right? And doesn't even make it through the story to the part where, but he didn't do it, right? Sarah has a heart attack and dies of grief. There's many versions of this in the Talmud. One is that she has a vision, she kind of knows what's happening, she intuits it. There's many versions of this, but in most cases, the rabbis are asking the question, why is the next time we see Sarah after the story of the Akedah, the binding, it just says she died? Right? So they have to answer that question. And most of the Midrashim say it's because she knows what's happened. And even if the boy's alive, because in one version, Satan comes to her as Yitzchak. So she sees Yitzchak. But she's told that Abraham bound him to the wood and raised the knife and was ready to do it. So now her grief is not about the death of Yitzchak. What's her grief?
Fury at Abraham.
The death of the understanding of who she thought her husband was.
Well, and Isaac loses everything in one swoop. He loses his relationship with his understanding of his father, who was his everything, and his mother. He's been basically abandoned from the people that he knows.
And tell me about his home life before all this. Yitzchak's.
He loses his brother as well.
So, right? He grows up with Ishmael. And he loses Ishmael. And who knows what went on there? The tension there. Who's going to be the heir? How much of an heir? The whole thing? Half a thing? Whatever, right? There's already stuff going on there. And then he's banished. So Ishmael is sent away. He's lost his brother. Let's say they got along or they didn't get along. How traumatic that all of a sudden your sibling's gone. The heir apparent. Remember, Ishmael stayed Yitzchak's heir, Sarai's heir. So the heir apparent is gone now. Whose place is secure then? Nobody's. So that's one thing. Then he loses his mother either right after or sometime after his father takes him to the mountain and is ready to slaughter him because the invisible new God on the scene said to.
Boy.
Enter a strong woman.
Enter a strong woman, right? So we have to hold all of that when we have Isaac outside having a sicha with nobody. There's nobody there that we know of, right? Okay, is it because he has a relationship with God? Maybe. I have this image of Isaac is just traumatized and he's a seeker and he wants a relationship with something permanent. Does he have one? I don't know. But he's clearly searching. He's hurting. He's lost. And we just see that continue with Yitzchak. Yes, Mehmet?
What was his relationship to Hagar?
We don't know. We really don't know. All we know is from what we read, something has shifted. Right, that makes Sarah not happy with the Abraham-Hagar arrangement. But possibly, yes, that if she was, and she would have been part of the family and the clan, and presumably people didn't take it out on the kids, but who knows, but yes, he loses another mother figure in Hagar, and Ishmael, a brother, then he loses his father, or at least, how do you ever trust, how do you live with a father who's ready to do that to you? And then he loses his mother. All right, all of that is what's happening right here. So he's in the field, he's doing whatever lasuach means, and then what happens? Lifnot erev, it's toward evening, so it's in the late afternoon. Vayisa enav, and he lifts up his eyes. Right? Tonight we're going to sing Esa Enai. Yeah? I lift up mine eyes to the hills, right? He lifts his eyes, and when he does, what happens when he lifts his eyes on purpose? Vayar. Of course, we always have this. It's Be'er Lahairoi, hello. He lifts his eyes, and then of course he's going to see. Abraham lifts his eyes, and what does he see? 3 strangers, right? So Yitzchak lifts his eyes, and what does he see? Vehine, and yo, Gmalim ba'im, camels are coming. So a little bit of like denouement there. Okay, so camels are coming. Vatisa Rivka et eneha. What happens? He lifts his eyes and sees camels coming. Rivka lifts her eyes. And what happens? If she's going to lift her eyes, what has to follow? She sees. Vatere. She sees et Yitzchak. He sees camels. she sees Yitzchak. She knows the name of the person she's going to marry. So out of whatever's going on, she knows. How does she know that that's Yitzchak? So already a difference in seeing, isn't it? And we've seen this. I'm sorry. So we've seen this with other times about seeing being accurate or not accurate, right? When Judah sees Tamar, what does he see? A prostitute, right? So they're seeing and seeing. He sees
with Hagar not seeing the well.
With Hagar not seeing and not seeing the boy, right? So in this case, he sees the camels. She sees Yitzchak. I would even go so far as to say she recognizes that this is Yitzchak.
So is she only being polite in the next verse?
She does ask.
So
she had to be told.
She can't be sure. But she seems the text seems to suggest that she recognizes this is her intended, right? Vatipol be'al hagamal. What does it literally mean, Rita? She fell off her camel. I don't make this stuff up, people. Vatipol me'al hagamal. She fell from upon the camel.
She was in shock.
She was in shock. She fell for Yitzchak, quite literally. Yeah. She fell off the camel in shock. I mean,
you want me to marry this guy?
Yeah. Wait. She said, "Wait a minute. You didn't bring a photo. I don't know about this. This guy's talking to himself in the field. There's nobody there. This is what you want from me." So she falls off the camel. It could mean she alit off the camel, right? I suppose. But even in biblical Hebrew, tipol, you fall on your face, right? Yes, it doesn't mean you literally fall on your face, but it does kind of mean dropping, like in a way that's a little more dramatic than
lack of control,
descending from the camel. So maybe a lack of control. So she, in some way, she comes off the camel. Vatomer el ha'eved, and she speaks to Eliezer. That's who she knows. That's the only person she knows in this situation, right? Other than her people, is Eliezer. Mi ha'ish halazeh haholech basadeh likratenu. Who's this guy in the field coming to meet us? She assumes he's coming to meet them. We get zero indication of that in the text, right? He's just walking around in the field towards the afternoon, right? But she's assuming likratenu, he's coming to meet us, and maybe he sees the camels and he turns and does start to come over to them. We don't know. Vayomer ha'eved, and the guys and the servant says, "Hu Adoni, he's my master." Vatikach hatzaif vatitkas, and she takes the tzaif, she takes the veil, and titkas, she covers herself. What's happening?
Why? She's going to be
Carol says why. Good. This is the most important question we ask in this room. Why?
Isn't it a realization she'll be a bride?
So whose realization? She knows she's going to be a bride. She's been acquired.
Man is going to be her husband.
I think she's covering herself for modesty, and maybe she's scared a little, and wants that explanation.
Carol says no. Let me just tell you that in Akkadian, the parent language of Hebrew, a bride on her wedding day is called kalatu kutumu, the veiled bride. Mm-hmm. So, to Judith's point, she sees Yitzchak. She thinks this is her intended. She asks, "Who's this guy?" And she's told, "That's my master," meaning that's the guy she's going to marry. So she veils because she now is a bride, or she's signaling to Yitzchak I'm the bride.
Because the next thing that happens is he takes her into his mother's tent.
Okay. Hang on. You're getting ahead.
This is a marriage ceremony here.
So she veils herself to say to him, and what I think about this is Rivka is controlling the entire.
Oh, she has to.
Their entire meeting. If he doesn't know it's her,
Yeah, she does.
Look, she's traveling with a posse of attractive, young, well-bred women. Young women. They're 14, 13, 15, 12, right? These young teenage girls. It's her entourage. If she doesn't signal to Yitzchak who she is, what might happen?
Choose someone else.
He might pick somebody else. And not that he has a choice, it's all been arranged, but imagine if he prefers somebody else, and then it turns out, no, excuse me, it's me, the big boned girl from southern Alberta. You just couldn't call her small, right? So if he had seen another one of the young women, and then she's like, no, wait, it's me. She controls the entire thing. She signals as soon as she knows who he is. He's coming towards them. She signals, it's me. I'm your intended. To allow him to interact with her in a way that's appropriate between the betrothed.
She's really clarifying it. The whole situation.
She's telegraphing it to everybody. I am now the bride. I didn't get my 10-day party, but I'm going to make an entrance, right, to Canaan. Right, I'm coming in strong.
So it was not the other girls. They didn't veil themselves.
Correct.
So that was the signal that it's only a bride who's going to veil.
Yes, they were not normally veiled.
Yeah.
It is our best indication. Sarah in Egypt was not veiled. And Tamar veils herself only when she's deceiving Judah, right? Only when she's being a sacred prostitute. So I don't know.
But it's strictly a signal of being a bride? Is that?
That's what it suggests, yes. That you're looking at the Akkadian term kalatu kutumtu means kala. Kalatu, right? It's exactly the Hebrew as kala, right? Same in Akkadian, kalatu. But then we get this adjective, kutumtu, veiled.
So Yitzhak would make no mistake that this is...
Correct. That this is happening. This is real. It's about, this is, what is it? This is your life and you are completely unprepared for it.
And
Pam?
the son was fooled by the veil.
Wait, say it again.
Jacob was fooled with Leah.
Yes. So that is another indicator that the bride was veiled, is because he doesn't recognize that his bride is not Rachel. Mm-hmm. Right? So that would assume that she's veiled, right? And so he can't see her face. So, yes.
Also, we talked about her getting off the camel. You don't just hop off the camel. I mean, you're way up in the air. This is a major production. It's a major production. So there's a whole thing going on here. It's not just, let me hop off the camel and throw a veil on.
Sarah?
Go to your mother's tent.
That by veiling herself, she piques his interest.
So, because it could have waited, right? They could have been introduced, and then you go in and change for the ceremony, right? You go and put on your white dress and the train, and and get ready, and then you would veil, right? So what you're suggesting is she already knows. She wants to control the.
That's what I think.
Carol. So she wants to control the scene, like how this unfolds, and so she veils to pique his interest. That I'm indicating I'm his bride. And if I go ahead and veil now, he hasn't even seen me.
It's all about
lovely.
So much is about seeing, right?
All of it's about seeing.
Yeah, because he sees the camel.
Right? And then she does something so that she won't be seen.
Because he hasn't gotten close enough.
Gives her more control.
Control, that's what it's all about.
You gotta love her for that, though. Women didn't do things like that.
Well, except They did, right? So that's what I love about our tradition, right? Because all of them do, right? All of ours do, right? Yes, women in ancient Near East in general, right? But all of ours do. Rivka's right in line, with how our women do things. All right. So she covers herself. She veils herself. And the servant told Isaac all the things he had done, right? So we have to imagine that for the servant to tell Isaac everything he's done, it means the women go to the women's tent, and Isaac goes with Eliezer. They sit, they light a pipe, they have tea or really strong, awful coffee, right? And they sit. This is now a ritual. Eliezer goes through the ritual telling of everything that's happened, right? It's going to take a while. Torah is very terse. It tells us like this, but we can imagine everything in between. They're preparing a feast, right? The women are trying to get things ready. They got to clean Sarah's tent. They have to vacuum. They have to dust. There's a lot to do. It's the desert, right? So this goes on, and then sometime thereafter, Torah doesn't really care about what happens in between, because the important thing is Isaac gets told the narrative of what happened, and then it says, "Vayavieha Yitzchak ha'ohel Sarah." Yitzchak brings her into the tent of Sarah imo, of Sarah his mother. Vayikach et Rivka, and he acquired Rivka. Vatehilo leisha, and she was to him as a wife. Vaye'ehaveha, and he loved her. Vayinachem Yitzchak acharei imo, and Yitzchak was comforted. What does your translation say?
After the death of his mother.
Okay, notice.
It's in brackets.
Okay, Rita, what does the text actually say in Hebrew? He was comforted
after his mother.
Acharei imo. I want to leave out the word death. You're going to tell me why, but I really believe it is again, God forbid I would argue with the translators, who are brilliant people. I think it's misleading because you're already filling in something that isn't there in the Hebrew. And I think it not being there in the Hebrew is significant. I don't think it's just after his mother's death.
Maybe finding comfort only now after such a long time of his mother passing.
So maybe it's distance from her passing. Acharei imo. He finds comfort after his mother.
Another strong woman. Meaning no one sees him.
He's never met anyone else who could comfort him the way Sarah could. Remember, she was how old when she had Yitzchak? Old. 99? Well, she's been longing for him her whole life. Imagine the relationship between Sarah and Yitzchak.
Not good.
Imagine the intensity. What did you say over there, Russo? Not good, right? So imagine the intensity of that relationship, right? Yeah. Something about Rivka. And they're intimate first. He's intimate with her, and then he loved her. That love, I believe, is the comfort, right? He loves her. That loving of her, vayinachem, comforted him, acharei imo, after his mother. Nothing else could touch the love he had with his mother until he has an intimate relationship. Right now it's a sexual relationship, which we can assume did not happen with Sarah. Right? So it's a sexual relationship, so there's already an added intensity, an added component there, right? And there seems to be something about Rivka, right? That love that he has for her is the only thing to comfort him since his mother. And I don't mean just since her death. Even if she were still alive, that there's been no other thing that could bring him comfort the way Sarah could. His love for her or her love for him. And maybe this is the beautiful switcheroo, right? Is it her love for him has always been his comfort. But now, what does he find comfort in? Giving. Loving someone else. A woman loved him in a way that brought him comfort, and he never found it again until he loved a woman with this kind of intensity, right? A beautiful metaphor, I think, for what it means to grow up.
Yes.
Right? Our parents comfort us. Their love is the most intense thing we know. Right? When Eliana said to me the other day, do you realize that I love you more than anyone else in the world loves you? like it had just occurred to her that I might not know that. And she goes, and I'm the person you love more than anyone in the whole world. I'm like, yes, I have thought about that before, right? It's occurred to me because the intensity of that, when it dawns on you, when you start to come online as a young adult, that it's the most intense love you've ever experienced until maturity, until we mature psychologically, spiritually, emotionally, sexually, and have a union with another adult that's not our parents. And in that loving, Yitzchak finds finally a comfort that he would never be able to find outside of his relationship with Sarah.
Back to his mother's breast.
Yes, but in a whole different way. Breasts have only meant one thing, right? Lying on someone's breast has only meant one thing till now. Now, being in relationship to someone's breasts is a whole nother ballgame. And it seems to bring a comfort to Yitzchak, right, that he desperately needs. Yes?
How old was Yitzchak when his father was going to kill him?
There are arguments about that. He's obviously old enough to carry wood, to carry a faggot of wood, which would have been heavy, right? And he's schlepping and carrying, and then he has to agree to go onto the altar. His father doesn't put him on the altar, right? So he's old enough to acquiesce, to comply, and has to be asked to comply. It suggests, right? Wouldn't that psychologically be the perfect time for us as Jews? It happened at bar mitzvah age, right? Wouldn't we put him up there in front of everybody and say, now sing in a language you don't understand, right? And then give a speech about the meaning of this language that you don't understand, right?
I wonder, besides the longing for his mother, if he also felt responsible for her death.
This is a beautiful, Rick, point that you bring up. Aviva Zorenberg, that I'm about to give you. Aviva Zorenberg exactly goes here. Where she goes is that he feels tangled up in Sarah's life in a way that is tragic for him. That he knows that she died because she heard. Yes, she was so worried about him that she died of a heart attack. And so he's been in Sarah's world and so tied up and enmeshed in it that he's also enmeshed in her, thinking he might be gone, and that makes her gone. And that he carries that hugely, and that it is Rivka's presence that's the only thing that seems to in any way bring him any comfort. Yes, after his mother. Absolutely, good insight.
Isn't it also possible that he was mad at her and then felt really guilty for never having gone back to her?
How could someone be mad at their mother, Bert?
It's possible. If she didn't stop. No, because she didn't stop. She didn't stop Abraham from almost killing him. That he was mad at her and never went back to make up with her and to reconcile, and then she died.
Why else might he have been mad? What if she didn't know? Right, the angel comes after they've already left. Mm-hmm. So what might have been his tangled relationship with Sarah about? What might that have been about? Yeah, I think it probably was pretty complicated.
Mm-hmm. He deceived Sarah in that he didn't let her know that his intention to sacrifice.
Abraham deceived Sarah, but I'm saying Isaac. I have to believe Isaac had a very complicated relationship with Sarah. Yeah. Any kid who's the only kid who's been waited for, miracle pregnancy after eons of infertility, right? And then everything that it means to be made the heir, Hagar and Ishmael are banished because of him, because of Sarah's, right, concern about his status as heir. It's possible Yitzchak really resents, on some level, all of the pressure, all of the focus, all of the yes, you're the greatest ever, 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 ever. The pressure on a kid to live into that. We call it the hero child. For him to live up to the expectation of the hero child is a lot. And it's a mixed bag, right? Your relationship with the person who does that to you is really mixed. On the one hand, they love you more than anything. On the other hand, you wish they'd go away and leave you be, right? And stop shining the spotlight on you all the time so that you can mess up. The pressure is intense, right? So I can imagine maybe when she dies, he realizes, oh my, right? All that tangled. As someone who just lost her mother, with whom she had a very complicated relationship, I have a new appreciation in some ways for where Yitzchak is right now.
I have a question about the English here, or maybe the Hebrew. It says, thus did Isaac take comfort after his mother.
Period.
No, could there be a missing word there? Did the rabbis ever put, in English, after his mother...
They usually just put death.
Rejected him, hated him, died, loved him, and then you could put...
I think we could put a lot of words in there, which is why I think translating it after her death is a disservice to the Hebrew, because I think the Hebrew's doing exactly what you say. I think the Hebrew just draw a big blank there, right? So you could just kind of fill it in every time you read it with your new understanding of what that relationship might have been about, and what the ahava, the love, is about, and what the yinachem, what the comfort is about. I think, yes, you could fill in, each year we read it, we could fill in 3 different new words. Judith, you were trying to say something?
I think Freud would have a lot to say about this. And actually, though I'm certainly not a psychiatrist, I think the relationship between a mother and a son, and a mother and the son's wife, is often fraught with conflict because you both love the same man. And the definition of those loves is sometimes not clarified.
Well, the interesting part is Rebecca and Isaac never have to deal with that.
That's right. But
she's gone.
All the stories since then, and in this room, I'll bet we might have 1 or 2 of that kind of.
She may be gone in body, but she's still there.
Yes, that's right.
Well, yeah,
and that's what Freud would say.
And where does he put her? Where does he put Rivka? In Sarah's tent.
Right.
You are the new Sarah. If we read it through the eyes of Savina Tuval, what's happening? Read it through the lens of Mesopotamia. What just happened?
She's the new goddess.
Rivka is the new priestess. Rivka has inherited Sarai's role in the clan as the priestess.
That's
Wouldn't
not
that
what
be the
Freud would
logical
say.
assumption here?
Yes. We're dealing with a patriarchal text and a patriarchal lens, so they're not going to go there. But if we read the way we've been reading the last 2 weeks, Mesopotamia, what Sarai's expectations would have been, Rivka, it seems Isaac knows that Rivka is Sarah's heir in terms of her ritual role, and he puts her in the priestess's tent. That's where she belongs. Right?
Bert, let me ask you the idea that Yitzhak was mad at Sarah. He would have to believe that she knew what Abraham was going to do, wouldn't he, in order to be mad at Sarah?
He could have been mad at her for other reasons, but I think many children assume that what happens to them is coming from both parents.
Right.
She let it happen.
She let it happen. So, or it could have been right. It could have been she let it happen.
She let it happen.
She let it happen. You could have a situation where you have abuse
which
in
would
the
be
house.
inconsistent with what Amy's been saying. There's an intense deep love. I'm not a psychiatrist, but there's a strange thing. If she really loved him that desperately, she would have stopped Abraham if she thought that's what he was doing.
I have to believe that. Yes.
How many of us blame
I have
our
to believe
unhappinesses on our parents? If they really loved me, then X would not have happened. They wouldn't have gotten divorced. I wouldn't have gotten whatever. Fill in the blank.
Yes, Jonna.
It just seems to me this whole thing is turned. Well, when Isaac goes into nature and is talking, praying, whatever, and then looks up, and then the shift happens. It's something about his being filled up. This is my own obvious.
But that's what we're supposed to do, is read our own whatever into this.
He's healing this great pain within this moment, or whatever it is, how long it is, and he is humbled enough to look up, and then he sees, and then he allows in this strong woman, and he says, okay, I trust again, I can love again.
Yes.
His willingness to love.
There's a beautiful piece that says exactly that, that it is, and all, Isaac's ahava, his love for Rebecca, is rooted neither in him projecting Sarah's clothes. He's going to. We understand ahava here not in the emotional sense, but as connoting an awareness of the sacred energy permeating and connecting every aspect of life. He's opened to a new healing and sense of being filled with an awareness that love permeates. Right, that love helps him understand that love permeates everything, right? So, but that's the whole idea, that it heals him, that loving Rebecca heals him in a way that is beyond just pain related to his mother. That it's about a much more, like you're saying, spiritually life-altering, existential awareness of what love is, what it can do. This love, it's unfortunately we know what comes. Unfortunately, we've read ahead. So this makes me sad, right? This scene makes me very sad on some level, because we know it gets really tangled, right? It gets really tangled between them. But at this moment, this love seems to do something to change him and his understanding of reality that allows him to heal after his mother. Because we could read after his mother to mean after all the complicated twists and turns of love, that's all he's known. Possibly this is, love after his mother is, oh my gosh, it doesn't have to be so complicated. Right? It can just be love, like without all this junk being dumped on me that comes with it, right? So again, I just leaving that word, after his mother's death, I think changes the whole thing. Okay, we're going to look quickly at Aviva Zornberg, because Rick, it goes to your point. Look at the bottom of 138. You see my markings, yes? All right. So Rashi points to he spotlights here the issue of Isaac's entanglement with his mother's life, her very kiyum, her very existence, the very problem of her existence, like existing and not existing, right? He doesn't mean that she existed was a problem, right? That the problem is her existing and not existing. The existential anguish of her last moment, which in the intuition of Kimat Shelo, which is quoting the Rashi's comments, retroactively confirms the contingency of a life and emerges in a strangled wail. This is what Isaac is involved with. His mother's anguished, strangled, dying wail that is about him not existing. It ends her existence. He is caught up in the vertigo of her being. For Isaac to be comforted, right, is what she's quoting what we just read. For Isaac to be comforted is to free himself of this fascination with his mother's pain and to turn to his own life. Rashi often explains the word nechama, comfort or regret, as machshava acheret, a different thought. Jana, this is to your point also. The notion is that comfort and regret both imply a shift in paradigms, allowing new questions, new anomalies to remove one from old preoccupations. In this reading, therefore, Isaac is freed from his preoccupation with his mother's life. He is freed essentially for new thoughts, a new way of thinking his existence. A very interesting interpretation of being comforted, right, is machshava acheret, a different way of thinking. Often, how do we find comfort in a situation?
We turn to something else.
We think about it differently, right? That yes, that was really hard, that was really scary, that was really awful. I came through it. I made it. I'm stronger than I knew. Right? Think hip surgery. So if I am scarred, I am different, but I am somebody I didn't understand myself to be before. We we have a machshava acheret, a different way of thinking about it, and that is the source of our comfort. Right. Not that existential reality has changed. Reality is what it is. It's my new way of thinking about it that allows me to relate to it differently, right? And have a different response. And to see it differently. Beautiful, Jana.
To Judith's Freudian point, that tent to me is very loaded.
Yes. It is to the rabbis, too.
That tent to me, I see as a womb, possibly, but I also see it as a transitional object for him to be able to bring his new wife into his mother's place and hopefully to his tent eventually.
No, she would stay in her tent, but not necessarily his mother's tent, right? So what I hear you saying is eventually, hopefully, she would move out of Sarah's tent, right, into her own.
This was a healthy step for him.
So that this ohel, this tent, Sarah's tent as the womb, absolutely, right? Because Rivka's going to bring. What's going to happen in Rivka's womb?
A child.
What else happens in there? They fight.
Oh, the twins.
They fight in her to the point where she's ready to say, if this is what it's going to be about, just we don't get anything in the Hebrew. We can imagine it's a gesture. It's so bad that she's ready to be done, right? So that womb is fraught. Her womb is fraught.
And so is the tent.
And that tent is fraught. As will the family tent be when she deceives Yitzchak to make her favored son, Yaakov, the heir. Right? So absolutely. Okay, so I have one more hand. Did we see another hand? Let's go to just quickly 139. I know I need to let you go. Let's look at my second marking there. The implicit understanding behind the Midrash. You can read the Midrash. This is about the tent. This Midrash is about every time he entered the tent, it was in darkness until Rivka comes. And now the tent is lit up again. The implicit understanding behind the Midrash is that Isaac does in reality suffer a kind of death at the Akedah. His mother dies at the Akedah, and with her, the light of her tent. In an astonishing fusion of images, the tent of her intimate life. We can't forget she didn't just live there. What happens in the woman's tent?
She conceives.
Right. They make love. The husband comes to the woman's tent for intimacy. So it's his mother's, not just her tent. It's the place of her intimacy with Avraham. The tent of her intimate life, and not just sex, but all the intimacies of brushing one's hair, flossing one's teeth, undressing. All those things are very intimate. Those were very separate in the ancient world. Very separate. The men didn't see that stuff. Yeah. It was very private. Women did that with women, not with men. So her intimate life becomes the energy that affirms life. Light, claims the Midrash, is by definition the meaning of ohel, of tent. To have left one's tent in darkness is to deny the value of being. I love it when the room reacts. The anguish of Isaac's reaction as he enters the condition of his mother's life, read tent, expresses a desperate involvement in the wailing of her end. With Rebekah's coming, the energy of hope returns because he now can see his mother's life as though she really had her being. Through the prism of his relationship with Rebekah, his mother's existence, her kiyum, becomes vital again. He's freed from the absolute captivating darkness of how she died and the darkness of her tent whenever he goes... read tent as her existence. And he's now able to see, we can imagine, stepping back, seeing a light in that tent. He's now able to see Sarai outside of that moment, to appreciate her existence outside of maybe even her fascination with him. She had a whole life before him, right? And he's able now to shift and see her existence in a way that frees him from the hyper-focus on that one point of agony. That was his death on the altar, because something died in Yitzchak on the altar, I believe. He's never really whole again, right? Something died on that altar. It had to. Sure. Innocence, naivete, what love actually means, trust. He's a child, right? So that dies, and that's superimposed the same moment Sarah dies. The same moment that Yitzchak dies on that altar, so does Sarah, according to Midrash. And Zorenberg's always going to read through the lens of Midrash, always. Right? So Sarah dies also. And he's caught in all of that and what that means until this moment. Until the light, capital L, comes on in Sarah's tent-read existence. And now he's able, right, to move forward with hope about, I believe, Zorenberg is suggesting his own existence.
He chose life.
He's choosing.
There. He's making a
He has now a different perspective.
Is he free?
I will say. I think she's saying he's free. In an important, very important way.
So in some sense, based on everything that Isaac has gone throughout his life, he's actually a shattered person. He's in pieces, literally. And there's something about, now is it something about Rebecca herself, or something about his willingness to let love into his life that allows for this sort of reintegration?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Mathematician, you can say how those things both are true at the same time. All right. So what I want to leave us with is, look, we are right now in this existential moment post Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. We are in the darkness. Yes. The light is off in the tent, right? In terms of like how a lot of us have been feeling personally. Also, on top of my own personal grief for my dead mother. There's so much here at this moment, and I think this spiritual teaching is critical for us to remember. The light comes on in the tent only through ahava, only through love. The love that we build here as a community, the love that we have in this room, the love that we have for our tradition, the love for those who are gone, the love for the ones who are ahead of us, for whom we're preserving all of this and trying to change the world so that they have a different existence. That love is our only hope. It is the only thing that's going to bring the lights back on. And when you walk out into the foyer today, notice the design, the architectural design of this building. It's built to look like a tent. Mm-hmm. This is our ohel. This is both our tent, our spiritual home, but it's also, like Zorenberg says, our existence. And we will not let it stay dark. We will not. So we will gather tonight for Solidarity Shabbat, for hashtag show up for Shabbat, for all the other things that's being called, because people need, to affirm, we need to affirm that the light is on in this tent, and it will stay on through ahava, through love. May we be strengthened and vulnerable enough to be open to it and strong enough to lean into what that will call from us. Shabbat Shalom.
You've been listening to Rabbi Amy Bernstein's Friday morning Torah study from Kehillat Israel in Pacific Palisades, California. For more information, go to our website, www.ourki.org.